All right, yo, we're we're back in. I think this is now where the fun's gonna get started, and I really don't know how to break this to you. Programming is hard, guys, and as we move forward, I'm gonna be working very hard to not sugarcoat anything, um, to try to explain it to you in an easy to understand way, in a simplified way, without making it overly simple. Because when you start getting into the world of professional programming, where people are going to pay you, um, there's a lot more to it than just coding and algorithms. And I think that's going to be the focus of today's topic today. Um, and it's very much akin. I mean, we're called software engineers. As you get to the high levels of doing this and you become useful in an organization in what you're doing, it's going to be almost as complicated as brain surgery, as rocket science, as flying an aircraft. And I think in this sort of world of startups and everyone trying to learn to code, all these coding boot camps and all these people that are trying to get your money, all these certifications, and they're very much dividing the knowledge from the source instead of unifying it. And what I'm sort of in, that's a little woo woo for you, but we're in a very divisive world where people trick you into believing that all you need to know how to do is program jQuery and you're a front end developer. That all you need to do is work on Python and you're a back end developer. That all you need to do is set up a server and you're a server admin, and so on. And my whole goal for all of you is just to become more well-rounded technologists, software engineers. That you're not. It's not going to matter what environment they put you in. You're going to understand how to think, and you're going to be able to take things step by step, and you're going to, fight to the end. So really, we're this next round of lessons and homeworks and stuff. We're going to focus on truly the core of what it takes to be able to survive in the world of programming, and that's uh, configurations and setups, um, commands and configurations. And so that's sort of the overarching theme that I'm going to be talking about in this video and the next video. The next video getting into specifics. So what do I mean? You aren't a good jQuery programmer if you can't turn on your computer, install the right software, and get to work, right? If you are literally, I know jQuery, I'm a master JavaScript, but I don't set up computers. You need to set it up for me, and once it's set up, I'm gonna get to work. Do you hear how crazy that is? Um, so you cannot separate any of this programming stuff from the basic knowledge of setting up a computer, installing software, configuring the software. And I think, all of us, us millennials, us who have grown up with computers, we're used to, taking routers out the box and setting them up and doing all that basic stuff. And that's very key, because if you don't know how to get your computer set up to install the right software for the right version that matches the production environment, the environment that you're getting paid to code in, you're worthless. So, and to tell you the truth, this is the easiest, in the sense that it's not requiring you to have deep knowledge of algorithms or anything like that. But it's hard because there's so many softwares, so many environments, so many operating systems, so many packages, and so many different ways to set them up. And so what you're talking about are very few things being able to be expressed in a multitude of ways. It's almost like the DNA, the building blocks of the DNA, that there's only really 4 letters that make up the complexity of life, which right now is the most complex thing. So I'm this is very esoteric, but we're focusing on configuring your computer, configuring your environment, right? Okay. So configuration can be in the form of you open up a file and you change some values in there. Configuration can be in the form of going into some type of system screen, in here, system preferences. We go here. If it ever opens up. This is all configuration, right? It's just presented to us with pretty pictures. We're configure the display. We're used to this in one form. But as soon as you bring it over to this form, right, where the only way you can configure it is by typing in commands, right, and seeing what's installed, seeing the versions of what's installed, going back to the documentation of, let's say if we're working in Python, which will be what we're focusing on today. What version of the Python support what software? And this is where it gets hairy. So this is when Google becomes your friend, and this is where we really separate the wheat from the chaff. And so before we really get into making really complex websites, because that's once you know a programming framework, they're all sort of the same. It doesn't matter if it's PHP, Python, whatever. The difference between all of them are the ways you're going to set them up. Okay? And why it's taken me so long to get this video out is I underestimated how hard it would be to get a pretty modern version of Python 3.5. That's not even the newest. 3.6 is the newest. But get that installed on a Red Hat instance, on a CentOS instance, on a Mac OS X instance. So just getting it installed, getting Django installed, okay, having a server available with the right module. In this case, we'll be using Apache, and having a module called mod WSGI, and we'll get into that in a minute. Having the right other module to connect Python to MySQL. And so it just getting those things installed is not as simple as going to some website, double-clicking, and you're just watching your screen. Now, in the sense of Python specifically for Mac, which I'm using right here, okay, yeah, that was true. But on my server, which is where I was using just to test, let me get a live Python installation going where I can go to a domain and I see hello world on a Linux server out in the world. That was, for me, I'm pretty mediocre. I think maybe other people might have gotten it, but it took me a lot. And on my Googles, on my trail through Googles to figure this out, I was not the only one to run into this. And so this is another thing that you need to think about, and this is to the project managers or to anyone, whether you're going to make a website for someone, whether you're going to start a business or a startup, what environment you're going to use, how hard it is to get it set up, has to factor into your costs. And me having been starting off as a PHP developer, I'm a little disappointed in the amount of work it took to get Python installed and going, compared to what it would take to get PHP going. I spent 5-6 days of just banging my head against the wall of getting all the little things. And it wasn't just the Python, the mod WSGI, the MySQL. There's also some Python specific things called virtual environments and virtual environment wrapper that a lot of people like using. And I see a lot of tutorials. So I'm like, oh, let me do the tutorial exactly the same way they're doing it. Just getting those things installed was such a headache. And so there is no real easy way for me to shield that from you. I mean, I've gone through it. We're going to just start now. I'm going to show you sort of how Python works, and I'm going to show you the overview of the configurations. And in the next video, we're going to actually configure it from scratch and sort of maybe go through those foibles so you can see. And at every step of the way, you have to know how to change the configuration, apply that configuration to your software, run it, and if something doesn't go wrong, you have to know where you're going to get feedback. Sometimes you're going to get it in the browser. Most of the time, with server software such as Apache, you have to specify in the configuration file where the error logs and the access logs are. And the access logs will tell you what URL, what relative URL or domain was hit on your server. And the error log will tell you if something went wrong. And it's just a lot of change the configuration, apply the configuration, run the software, check the error logs. And you're doing that over and over again. And that's the biggest thing of what, a server admin, that's one of the things a server admin needs to be able to do, because this stuff's not always just going to work. You're going to spend all the time getting it set up, and then you're going to need to maybe install something else, or something's going to go wrong, and you're going to need to know in a concise way the sort of the steps of how to troubleshoot. And these are the sort of the same steps that you would take in getting things set up. Okay. So I guess my goal for any of you that are just want to learn a little HTML or jQuery to really beef up your knowledge of operating systems and just getting these software set up, because frankly, I'll take someone that has a knowledge of these environments and can get it set up, and maybe does their code a little bit more hacky and it isn't as sustainable code, but that kind of person will at least be able to get you a prototype or something working. Whereas, many people who focus just on the coding are worthless, in the sense that they need 2 or 3 other people in order for their work to mean something. So I want to sort of take a step back from focusing on making pretty and expansive websites that do all these functionalities, but just getting a very basic website set up on a production grade environment. Okay, so I've spoken enough about that. Let me just sort of read some of these notes. So this is very server admin heavy. Definitely server admins need to pay attention to this. Everyone else really should too. And I can't make this any more simpler as we talk about this. So this is just one of those things you're going to have to watch this again. Write questions down. Email me. I'm going to be in the Slack. I'm going to be around. I'm going to set up time to do some Google Hangouts with you guys so we can have one-on-ones or talk in a group, and you can get the questions out that you need. Google this stuff. But it's just like learning a foreign language at this point, that dog, perro. I can't make it any more simpler than that. You can go and learn Latin and you can learn the roots of Spanish, but that's just overcomplicating it. Some of this stuff you just sort of need to memorize and understand how it fits together. And this is going to be your base. And on top of this base, we'll be able to build, MVC patterns, how to build great code. Okay, so like I said, the language of the server admin is commands and configurations. Okay, And there's thousands of quote unquote dialects, right? You're gonna have to know how to configure through the bash, the command line. You're gonna have to know how to open up files. Let me show you one version. This is the configuration file for Apache, the server that actually serves up your responses when you go to them. And you see that these things are used for comments, so anything after this pound doesn't get read. This will. You see, there isn't any real. It's not like straight XML, although you're going to see some XML-like tags here, right? Configuration files can be anything that you want. It's on the software that's going to be reading in this configuration to understand how things are laid out, and so it can read it correctly. And then it's on the server admin or whoever's setting this up to stay within the conventions of the configuration file. And you can see even this, this is a good exercise in terms of me remembering, the language of the Apache HTTPD.conf, That's just all these different things are specific to Apache, and they're not necessarily going to carry over to another server like Nginx or Windows Server, IIS, or anything like that. They're going to have their different ways of configuring. Many of the ideas are going to be the same, but the way they split it and they name it are going to be so different that you're just going to have to know how to work with each type of configuration file. And that's just a lot of memory, a lot of practice. There's no way around it. Whereas, you learn a couple programming languages, it's a little bit easier to get thrown into another programming language and sort of learn it. So this is one configuration file. Actually, we can look at another one. I'm going to open up the Django settings file. Again, settings, all these things are static sort of switches, just like you're in a airplane or in the Batcave, or any of those sort of pictures that you'll see of switches and knobs. It's the same thing. You hit the switch, you got to hit the certain combinations of switches for a certain feature to be working on a plane, and it's the same thing with software. So this is the settings file, the configuration file for this particular project in Django. And I can't simplify this. It is what it is. You open it up, it's this, these are the conventions they chose. It's the rhyme or reason that a human came up with. It's not something based on external like science or math, or this is the right way to do things. It's just someone had to make a decision, like, this is how we're going to make our configuration file. I know I've been harping on this, but this is, I think, the hardest part of being a programmer, of getting your environment set up, of getting an environment set up properly. Because once it's all set up, it's smooth. Everything else is smooth. Doing your git commits, debugging or testing your code, all that stuff becomes so much easier when the environment's set up. So, a server admin, computer tech, is a person who sets up the development production environment for developers and all the other consumers or users of the business, tech, or ecosystem. A server administrator or admin has overall control of a server. This is usually in the context of a business organization, where a server administrator oversees the performance and condition of multiple servers in the business organization. Or it can be in the context of a single person running a game server. And this is very euphemistic. What does it mean, running a game server? It means setting the configuration switches, flags, files, installing the software, testing that it works, and then being there when something goes wrong to be able to look at, for instance, error logs or access logs. Here's the error log. You see this for Apache, right? Here's another Apache error log. This is one specific to my Django project. And you can see the different areas that I had to look at and figure out why I'm not seeing the hello world screen. As you can see, that is being routed through the mod WSGI. We'll talk more about that later. Here's the access log. This will just tell you, okay, there's a GET request to the base route using the HTTP 1.1 protocol. Give it 200. I forget what this is. It might be like a process ID. I'll look that up and we'll get more specific. You can go ahead and do some extra work, and that's very much on how HTTP works. You know, the OSI layer, I think it's called. We'll get to that. TCP, all that stuff. It's good to know, you know, that this means okay, or 403 is not found, or just what all those different things mean, and sort of what's happening behind the scenes. So we'll review that again. All right. The server administrator's role is to design, install, administer, and optimize company servers and related components to achieve high performance of the various business functions supported by the servers as necessary. This includes ensuring the availability of client-server applications, configuring all new implementations, and developing processes and procedures for ongoing management of the server environment. Where applicable, the server administrator will assist in overseeing the physical security, integrity, and safety of the data center and server farm. But you see, I even said it right there, configuring all new implementations. That's the heart of what makes computing hard, is putting it together, configuring it, getting it to work. Okay. As we go on, we're gonna talk about. We're gonna use the comp TIA IT fundamentals and sort of go through that. So we're gonna really be learning in such a way that if you really study and you learn this stuff, you should be able to go get certified, at least for your IT fundamentals. You know, we're gonna get more advanced, and I'm gonna be using actual class books to sort of make sure that we're learning at the highest level possible. Okay. So that's my spiel. All right. So, how do you work with Django? Let me get out of here. Okay. Make sure we're at the right place. Gotcha. So, first off, Django is a web framework built on top of Python that makes it easy to create URLs and point them to functionality to show a view. And those views will consume models and other other logic contained in Python modules or Django apps that interact to take in input, to process input, and then output those that data into views. Okay, which is all really websites are doing, all programming is really doing. And Django touts itself for being fast. Once it's set up, it's great. But again, I think a big negative mark, in my opinion, was the amount of time it took. You know, PHP never took me this long, ever. So just know that you want to learn Python, you're going to have to know how to set it up. You're going to have to know all the different things you need to install. And plus, PHP 7 is actually faster. But we're doing Python right now. So first thing, you got to make sure that you install Python. Okay? Once Python's installed, then you should have access to the Python installer called pip. And to make sure I'm using the right one, it's called 3.5 because I have multiple versions of Python installed. And that's actually another aside. Many times, computers like this Mac, Linux servers, your EC2 instances are going to already have a version of Python in there that are critical to a lot of the system functionality. And many times it's like Python 2.6 or 2.7, which is considered outdated. So you're going to want to make sure that you have, when you're starting a new project, that you have the most up-to-date version of Python installed. Once it's installed, you got pip installed. You can right away with pip, in this case, you can, if I do, remember that there's autocomplete functionality, so I can go pip and type tab, and it'll show me all the different corresponding commands that start with pip 3. I want to make sure I'm using pip 3.5, and there's a command, as you see, freeze, that will show you output install packages in requirements format. So let's do a pip freeze. Okay. I have some packages on here that I'm not 100% familiar with, but I know that they're important. But the most important, well, not most important, but the one that is actually good form to have on your system in order to develop with Python is something called virtual environment, and then a helper module that wraps around virtual environment called virtual environment wrapper. What do these things do? They allow you to have any number of Python modules, versions installed, and they'll be contained in different virtual environments. And the way you make a virtual environment, well, there's a way to do it with pure virtual env. The virtual env wrapper, once you get it set up, will allow you to do something simple called like this: make virtual env, and we're going to call this get experienced, or just my project, or just call it new project. Okay. You figure I'd be a little bit better with naming, but that's fine. Hit enter. So you see it's doing something right there. It's using the up-to-date version I have installed, Python 3.5. It's taking that executable. What's an executable? It's simply similar to like a file on Windows that you go click, click, not the shortcut, but the actual program that the shortcuts, attached to, you double click on it and it starts the file, starts the program, starts Photoshop, whatever. That's what an executable or a binary is, okay? It's already put together and it's able to run on your system. So it's going to take that binary, move it to a place that I have specified in my bash profile file, which we can look at later, another type of configuration that tells this entire terminal, it gives it variables and it tells me where certain things are installed. So I have a variable that says virtual like project home or something, and that's where it's this user Aaron Bell virtual env. That's where it's creating the new folders for the new projects, and it's installing the binaries as well as anything else that we're going to need. And you're in a virtual environment when you see these parentheses with the name of the virtual environment that you typed in. So now we can look and we can just use Python and see that we have all this stuff. I'm still learning what all this crap is, but it's fine. We're in the Python interpreter right now, so we could just do sort of some Python code here and it will just spit out the result. That's not how we want to work, but I just did that just to show you we are using Python 3.5.3. Okay. Exit out of the interpreter like that. You can do Control D as well. It doesn't matter. Great. So again, virtual env, and specifically the module or program virtual env wrapper makes it easy for you to create a quarantined Python environment where you can install all the different modules that you like and it won't muck up your global Python environment. So we got a new virtual environment with Python installed. Okay. Now we need to install Django. And by doing this, it's going to only install in our virtual environment. Okay. You can do a pip freeze. Great. We got a new version of Python or of Django installed. Okay. Something to keep in mind. We are not in the new project folder. It's simply saying that it's going to pull from this new project folder for any Python related environments, binaries. Okay. We are still in users Aaron Bell sites, which I have set up for Apache to pull the sites or folders in there, so it will show me something in the browser. So I have a server installed locally on my computer that acts like any other server hooked to the internet, but I just go to localhost / whatever folder is in sites, and it will serve it as if it were a website. Okay. So we've done that. Inside of this folder now, we're going to use a command called Django Admin. Let's just type that in, okay? And that'll show you the available commands. Again, what did I tell you? We're still in the server admin phase, right? We haven't programmed anything. We're setting this up. So you can see part of the configurations are running the right commands and configuration. So we're doing a Django admin command, the main command, and then there's subcommands. And we want to do start project. Django admin start project. We'll call it first project. We can do an LS, which means list the files in the current directory you're in with the flag of L and A, which will show me everything, including hidden files and their permissions. You see right here, right? We could just do a regular ls, but this command gives you a little more. Okay, I'm going to slow down. It's all good. This is just, you're going to have to memorize this. I suggest typing these things over and over and over again and just get used to it. Okay? As we see, I have a bunch of stuff in here. We just created first project. So C directory, CD, first project. What's in this folder? We see a folder called first project and a folder called manage.py. Okay? So, we still can't do anything yet. We need to tell the server where this project is, because it needs to be able to pull in the right file that will work with this module.wsgi to then, which works with a Python interpreter to actually read the files in the right way and serve up a web page. Okay? So, let's go inside first project. And so we see we have a settings, we have a URL, we have a WSGI.py. Okay? Okay. So, you see I already created a Hello World app, but we're doing this from scratch. So, the next thing we have to do is in this apache.com file, we have to basically allow Apache to know where this website is. And I already sort of have a configuration already set, and so we're going to use that. But what I will do is so the first thing, you got to specify a server name. Localhost always sort of points to your local IP address, which is 127.0.0.1. I'm giving it a specific port of 8888. All right, okay. All right, that's a lot. Ports. It's just another number put at the end of a URL or an IP address that just is like just another unique identifier. So you can literally have localhost port 1, and that can go somewhere else. Localhost colon port 2. You can have, IP address, whatever, making up an IP address, whatever, port 4545, and that goes somewhere. You can, so it's just a way of, once you've gotten your IP address, which you don't have that much control over, that's more on the phone companies and the internet service providers. Once they give you your static IP for your website, you can then use that one IP address to serve up any number of other web pages from unique addresses. And so you could point a www.domain1, and it literally is going to this port. This isn't the proper configuration. I'm just doing this side by side, and you could change it by one number, and it could go to different domain that you bought through GoDaddy, and they're all pointed to your same server, but they're just different folders or different ways of serving up files on your computer, okay? Let's go back. So to keep everything clean, because Apache already sort of comes configured, ready to do port 8080, port 80, and those are actually pretty reserved on the computer already. So rather than trying to fight existing configurations, that's another problem when you have an operating system that already has something configured, but you have a different idea of how you want to use it. You have to go back, undo those configurations so you get your new configurations to work, or mitigate knowing that those configurations are there, just do slightly different configurations so you don't have to fight it. It's up to you how you do it. Okay, so I just have a different port ready to go. We have to tell it, so here's where we have a specific configuration called WSGI Python path, and I have to tell it, this is where all the different Python modules and packages are, so that way Python isn't self-contained. It's simply an interpreter of all the rules of the syntax of how to interpret the language, but you also need to be able to do math and deal with strings, and those are other modules that have to be loaded in separately. Great. Have that set. This is just an Apache convention. You have to set a virtual host. I'm saying any domain, whatever, anything that's anything that's pointed to this server, and it has port 8888. I want you to use this configuration underneath it. And as you see, I already have a configuration set up. So we can basically, I'm going to comment this stuff out. Okay. So you comment out things in an Apache configuration file, so it only works for this file, so to speak. So I copied it. Let's get rid of this duplicate opening tag. Let's get rid of that because we don't need it. So we know we name this first project. Okay. Now I need to project. I need to create a place for these Apache logs to go to. In this folder, Apache logs. These things don't exist yet, so we're going to go back to our command line. Clear so we can see where we're at. pwd, which shows where we're at. Let's go back to the main project file. PWD just is like, this is where we're at. LS shows you all the files. We're going to make directory Apache. We're going to go into that directory. We're going to make directory logs. We're going to go into that directory. We're going to create or touch a folder or a file called Apache error log. We're going to do the same thing for the access log. See, those files are now there. We're going to make these readable and writable right now. You shouldn't do 777, but because it's a local computer, or we're using our local computer, we're not doing this online anywhere, it's fine. So we're going to make sure that these are writable, because Apache has to be able to spit out its text in here if something goes wrong. Okay. Here are the permissions. You see how they are there? There they are now. Okay. They're writable. Readable, writable, executable. Readable, writable, executable. Readable, writable, executable. Public. There's 3 different types of categories for the readable, writable, executable. Won't worry about that right now. So next, every Django project comes with a WSGI.py file, and that is what allows Apache to communicate with your Django installation and actually create a website. Okay, we're going to open that up. Now, we could think, okay, we're done, right? They give it to you right out of the box, and it should be good to go, okay? Well, first we need to create a URL. Okay, so this is a little bit complicated, so you're just going to copy what you see here, URL, basically nothing. And I'm going to create a view, a file called views, which we're importing from our project. There's going to be a class called homepage view, and you're going to kick it out as a view. These are Django specific conventions. So we're gonna get into the theory of Django. Really, this is more about just getting it set up. Okay, so let's go ahead. This is from my other project that I already created. Let's go in here into the URLs file. Add that there. Next, we need to create a file called views. Okay. I'm literally just going to take what was already in my other file, and I'm going to let you take a look at that. Okay, we import some modules that we're going to need. Some Python modules. Text wrap, so this is allowing us to create an HTML response. This is not going to be the scalable way that we do it. We will get to the point where we're actually creating real HTML templates that have Django variables in there, but for now they were just doing a hello world app. So we need to import the right libraries, modules to get this done. You see, I created a class and dispatch, which gets called when you do this as view. Okay. It's a little more complicated. Just copy and paste it for now. We're just trying to get hello world up. So we got a URL in there. We have our view connected. Okay. We made our change to our Apache file here, httpd.com, if we're using Apache 2.4. You always need to apply your Apache configuration, and sometimes the best way to do that is to restart. There's multiple ways to do that. Mac specific. And I installed this with a package manager called Homebrew on Mac. We'll get into that later. Don't really get into specifics because you could be on PC, you could be on something else. But I'm going to use the command called Apache Control and just restart. Okay. So now I'm going to close these up. I'm going to... No, that's not what I want to do. Open this one up. I'm using Sublime Text here, just so you know. I've gotten used to it, and it's not bad. We want to go into our first project. Go to our logs. Error logs. Nothing yet, because we haven't tried to look at it, but I want it open, so that way we can see right away if something goes wrong. So let's see localhost 8888. Exactly what we said here. What do we get? We get an internal service error. Uh-oh. We go here. Great. You would think that seeing errors in the error log is bad, but that means that Apache it knows where our project is. Okay? It's actually running the mod WSGI, and it's interpreting the mod WSGI Python file. So, like, we're close, okay? And the amount of work it took me to get to this point, it sure didn't feel like close, but we're almost there. Issue is now no module named first project settings. Okay? I had to basically mangle. This is what they give you. This right here. But I had to go from that and do a lot of work and a lot of check on the internet. And this might not even be the most proper way, but it's working. And so that's more important at this point. Okay? So let's get this out of here. What was the name of our virtual environment? New project. Okay, what did I just do? Okay. We needed to basically include our project in Django for it to know our settings and do what it needs to do. And look, this wasn't given it to us. There might be another way to do it, and I'm going to do my research, but this is what I had to do. And I had to do a crazy amount of Googling to get, and so many tutorials just to get here, okay? But we're basically saying the system path or search path, or basically anytime someone says first project, and that's not correct too. We got to make sure we change this. So now, because I've included our first project in this, what the heck happened? Okay. So I've said I'd say include our virtual environment. So it gets all the binaries and it uses the right Python version. Include our project that we created. And because we included it, now it's going to know, okay, in first project, it searches, oh, I found something in first project, okay, settings, and it knows how to handle it. It didn't have that before. We're in this file called wsgi.python. WSGI needs to make sure that it has a variable name application. So this is the handler that all of the rest of your Django code is going to go through, okay? That's in there. Are we going to see something different? views not defined. Okay. That's not too bad. It just means that in our URLs file, we need to include our views. No reference to Drake or anything like that. Just to view. So that's there. And we got a hello world app. So that is the basics of getting Django set up.